Here it is from Heliofont, I Pet Goat 2, and then we'll be back with the maker to decode its secrets. simply breathtaking. That is I, Pet Goat 2. And the gentleman that made it is going to be joining us here via video Skype in just a moment. His production house is Heliofont, and you can go to heliofont.com. He's worked on many movies like The Spirits Within, Final Fantasy. He worked on The Doctor, that I think was the best animated in there. In fact, Rob Dew was putting that out before we went on air here. And he is also someone who worked on Gollum for the Lord of the Rings film. Just an amazing artist, and spent years putting together what you just saw. I mean, the archetypal images in it, a lot of people have projected onto it their own thoughts, their own ideas, and they say the most powerful art out there is basically designed to do that. Some people have said it's satanic and it's programming us. That reminded me of when I consulted on A Scanner Darkly for Richard Linklater, and Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, Woody Harrelson, a bunch of others are in it. I'm also in the film. And it's got Illuminati imagery all over it. But it was there to expose the Illuminati. I mean, it's hidden in plain view that, hey, the bad guys are the Illuminati or whatever. And people are saying, oh, my gosh, it's subliminal Illuminati. No, subliminal means it's too quick for the conscious mind to see it. Now, Louis Lefebvre is joining us now from a city north of Montreal. He's a 3D animator, director, and entrepreneur, and he joins us. Very excited to have him on. Again, you just saw the piece. We're going to analyze it here. Well, Louis, do you need to be burned at the stake? Is this actually satanic programming? No, I mean, why did you produce this? What is the message that you see in it?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Alex.
Thank you.
I think all symbolism can be invested with whatever meaning you want to project on them. Symbolism is a language. So the elite obviously use it in a kind of degrading way to degrade the human spirit. And they've kind of co-opted all symbolism. It's like, regular humans don't have much knowledge of symbolism, and so they don't understand it. They can't really decipher it. And we've been led to believe that all symbolism is just negative and evil, but it's not. It's just whatever we want to put into it, whatever meaning we want to put into it. And in my film, the thing that people get stuck on the most, I've noticed, is the triangle on the Christ figure, and also the eye on the Christ figure on his forehead. And for me, the eye placed on the forehead represents inner vision. So it's clear spiritual insight. For the Illuminati, or the elite, when it's used, for example, on the dollar bill, it represents a total control freak surveillance society. And it's the same thing. That's what the pyramid means. It's every layer manipulating the layer below it, and giving the people at the apex incredible control. And the eye is about being everywhere and just seeing everything. So it's about total surveillance. Whereas what I tried to put it, I tried to redress those symbols. And so I have it on the Christ figure. The triangle means God, it means the Trinity. And the eye means spiritual insight. And then you have the crown of thorns. To me, what that represents, the crown of barbed wires, is the way we are manipulated, and it's kind of like a war on consciousness. So you'll notice that the crown is between the triangle and the eye, so it's kind of like a barrier between my spiritual insight and the divine. And at the end, that crown disappears. So it's like, oh, finally, I have clear spiritual insight. I can see my Creator. Well,
that's what I got, and I've never talked to you until now. We set you up for the show, and we talked a few minutes before we went live here, but I've never talked to you about what your incredible piece of art means. I mean, it's right up there with Fantasia, the original. But looking at it, I see it as a person's journey with Christ through life, seeing all the different evil, seeing the different, the sex trade, the torture, the war machines, the devil snake system that looks out of the television, preying on people, programming them, and then the individual who's traveling, basically with Christ, symbolizing that flame that you've got the Holy Spirit. That's not really Jesus. That's the individual, with the spiritual connection to Christ, comes out into a wider universe, and all of that was just Plato's cave behind him. And of course, there's much deeper symbolism than that, but is that a accurate representation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He represents a flame, and so it's a fire. And I don't know if you recall that, John the Baptist had baptized in water, and he said of Jesus that Jesus would baptize in fire. So I don't see that it's inappropriate.
It doesn't matter. Anything powerful is going to freak people out that go to these globalist program churches who are taught to love world government, and they worship 6-foot icicle preachers. So, of course, they're upset by it because it's moving, it's powerful. What gave you the idea? Because I've never talked to you before, but I feel like I know you just watching this. I mean, you've got Bush in there, animated. You even captured kind of his demonic spirit, with the kids acting like he doesn't know what's coming. It cuts to Obama, and then he suddenly looks into the universe, symbolized by, creation with the flower. Am I right there? Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your view, your awakening.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff. But basically, the film came to me in a place of suffering. So it was all the things that I had lived personally, and the materialism that I had experienced in different realms in my life that I had also contributed to. So not just put on me, but also, I had gotten involved in it as well. So it was about that place of suffering. And it just felt like this film for me was a sort of lifeline, a way for me to go into my own fears. And I think that that's what I've seen in people, is it brings up a lot of stuff. It just kind of stops the mental programming, and then just kind of goes right viscerally, and people have a hard time with it. And I can understand, because I went through the same questioning. I had those fears. I saw this. I kept seeing the Christ figure on his boat, and I was like, and that was what was coming up for me. It felt like I had to do this film, and I was resisting it because I was terrified in a way, because I know what the programming is, I know what the fear is, I know what Christians believe, and I know those fears intimately. So it was, but it was an invitation to go beyond those fears and go deeper into the question, and go deeper into my own fears and into my own limitations, and transcend those fears. So that's what it was for me. This was a real journey. Say a spiritual journey for me. It was wonderful. Every
image, when I see it there on screen while you're talking, we're playing some clips of it, just conjures up all these archetypes. And when you're showing Shiva or other archetypes, we see the images of women, in the walls. It's all right there. But I'm somewhat, from research and study, more conscious than a lot of average people. I can see how someone who's very unconscious, this is almost like a big bucket of ice water being thrown on them to awaken them. And so I can see they've been so programmed by the globalists that are aware of what they're doing, that when you release something so in your face, just congratulations, you've got people thinking. Yeah, well, like I said, it was a real spiritual journey for me, but I'm glad it's helping people to have a discussion about it. I think it's important. We have so many walls between different ideological systems, and I'm hoping this just kind of breaks down some of those walls. And I guess that would be the best outcome. But I can't control how people interpret it. It's not really my business what they interpret out of it, obviously.
So I'm just doing what I can.
How long did it take you to put this together?
It took me about 5 years and all. It took 4 years to, I'd say, full time. So from 2008 to now, I've been working on it full time. But before that, I was working on it part time for maybe 3 years. So, you know, like cobbled together, it would maybe make another year. So 5 years in all about. And I've had people helping me since 2008. I've hired, you know, people off and on a kind of contractual basis, you know, mostly friends. And some of them, sometimes they'd work freelance from home. Sometimes they'd actually, the last year I've had a guy coming in, a good friend of mine coming in 3 days a week, helping me out with the special effects, the snow, the, you know, the smoke, the water, all these things. But I did most of the animation, actually did all the animation of the characters and did all the modeling as well, and the rigging and the lighting. But all the special effects were done by, well, not all, but most of the special effects were done, which is, you know, for people who don't know what that means exactly, it's like I said, it's the snow, it's the water, the fire, the smoke. All these things were done mostly by freelance artists. I've had a couple of matte painters, which is the backdrops, the you know, the skies and that kind of thing, help me out as well. And I've also hired a couple dancers. I had one girl, because I went into a motion capture studio for some of the animation, like half of the animation is motion capture, like we've seen, I'm sure a lot of the viewers have seen on Gollum. So a lot of the motion capture was done, sorry, a lot of the animation was done through motion capture, and the motion capture was done at a studio, a dance studio, actually a dance faculty at a university here in Montreal. And I hired one tap dancer and one kind of modern breakdance dancer to do the little American Indian dancer. So that's about the process, yeah.
Louis Lefebvre is our guest. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen in modern times such a labor of love with you know, this many graphics, this much energy and time put into something. Because obviously the time to render, the time to draw it, the time to put it together, for those that don't know, I mean, even for a big company, this would be a major undertaking. So I can, I mean, I think you're saying you were already awake, but you really awoken, you know, to what was happening in the world, and that this is, you know, kind of your masterwork, or something that, you know, symbolizes the beginning of what will become your masterwork.
Who knows? I don't know where it's going to go, but yeah, basically, I was, I think I felt a lot of. I think because it was the Jesus, or well, it's not the Jesus, it's like Christ consciousness as I see it. But I mean, if you want to see it as Jesus, that's wonderful as well. I mean, I think that's, like you said, it's open to interpretation. But because it was that character, I felt obviously a lot of, I put a lot of pressure on myself, because I felt like I didn't want to do it disrespect. I have a tremendous amount of respect for the teaching of Jesus Christ. So I felt I just have to do it, you know, some justice. I can't just be disrespectful with it. But, you know, unfortunately for some people, it still has failed, and it's... Oh,
I wouldn't let that distract you. I mean, you're exposing evil here. You're getting people to think, waking them up out of their trance. I love how you have Osama bin Laden in the CIA a commando outfit. I mean, obviously, from what I've gotten from these views, you're obviously questioning the official narrative of 9/11.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I started this piece, it wasn't really, I didn't know much about it. Like I said, it started about 2005. It was starting to come together in my head. And at that time, I didn't know anything about 9/11, like as far as a conspiracy. I just knew it as a time of sadness, obviously, and a marking point in our timeline. Obviously, what I see it as now, it's obvious to me now, just looking at it, like the way it falls. Plus, I have an engineering background. I studied in engineering, so, but it doesn't make me an expert. But still, when I look at those two buildings falling today, it's just like, oh my God, how did I ever think it was not a controlled demolition? And but what I see it now as, you know, with my research in symbolism, which I didn't know much about when I started the film, I can now see that it's a ritual, as it's a ritual about, it's kind of a way to say, look, this is what's going to happen to your economy, because those two towers are a symbol of the economy. And when they crumbled, it was like, we will implode your economy. And you watch as you watch your economy crumble. So that's what it means.
Exactly. As I've studied the Illuminati, who really are the opposite of what they say, they seek to create darkness, but then call themselves illuminated because they're going to be illuminated, but you're going to be in darkness. That
Right.
well, it's basic magic. They have to engage in the lesser magic of telling you what they're going to do up front. And so the mojo is 1 trillion times more powerful when they actually do it. So they have to almost count coup before they do it. That's why on Fox TV, they had the government hijack a jet by remote control to fly in the World Trade Center. They make NORAD stand down because of a drill. They say hijackers are on board, but it's really remote control because they want to attack Afghanistan and take American liberties. That aired 6 months before. And then it turned out hundreds of publications and outfits did the same thing, and they were all literally beating the drum, getting everyone ready to then do this. And then Warren Buffett had over 100 top CEOs flown that morning to already meet with him in a hangar at Moffett or Offutt Air Force Base. I mean, all of this, and then the CIA drills, and then the heads of Al-Qaeda meeting at the Pentagon secretly, and the bin Ladens being flown out. It's important to them at multi-layers to let those of us that are conscious and awake but not serving them, because there's people that are conscious but they serve the dark side. They're only partially conscious, or they know what a fool's errand that is because they love death and destruction. But they need to reveal it before they do it. And again, even if you don't believe in that stuff, viewers, this is what they believe. Comments on that. Again, we're talking to the creator of I, Pet Goat 2. You can watch it at heliofant.com, HELIOFANT.com. Just amazing. Go there and certainly support the work he's doing, support independent media and research and things like this, because this is a major studio undertaking. You've done it with just yourself and a handful of others. But anyways, I'm ranting. What do you make of what I just said about this revelation of the method? Yeah.
I don't know about that. Like, I'm learning this as I go along. You know, I don't know what their intention is, but it's gotten pretty blatant. And so I think this film is about taking that symbolism that they have and throwing it back in their face. Like, I mean, this is just getting ridiculous. And like I said, I started the process where I didn't know much about it, and I'm learning as I go along. What's wonderful is I've read so many articles and stuff on, conspiracy websites and other websites, and people that know symbolism, people that know a lot more symbolism than I do, and telling me about symbolism that I didn't even know about in my film, which is kind of, interesting. And so I just, I'm learning as I go along. But certainly, I think you know more about a lot of it than I do. I mean, I learned what I learned about conspiracy, actually. A lot of it I learned through the web, through people like you. At one point during when I had started making the film, I think I told one of your crew members, sometimes I actually tune in just to I'd get kind of down sometimes because I was all alone in my corner, and I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is crazy. I'm crazy. What is this? And I just kind of tune in and just have it just kind of boost me up to like, okay, yeah, this is important.
Sure, because the system's all about isolating us, like that scene with the character who's laying there and doesn't even have their own mind and is almost in a waking dream or hallucinating, and then there's the snake plugged into their brain, almost sucking their brain or feeding off the fact that they're unconscious, and then being able to tune in and hear all the other callers and guests lets you know that there's a giant growing community of people who are discovering deeper layers of reality.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's an organic process, and it's wonderful just to just kind of go online and read all these comments and see how it has stimulated debate. And you know, a lot of people have gotten the meaning of what I was trying to say, and that's been very encouraging. And I think
when did you release this?
Oh, it was like the 23rd. I mean, June, the end of June, 23rd or 24th. I think we finished, and we had a kind of a little rap party with friends and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay, well, that shows how things grow organically, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes in between. I didn't hear about this for a couple weeks after that until last week. And then since then, I'm just looking around doing research separately and seeing it pop up everywhere, positive, negative, everything in between, causing debate. And so it seems to just be really picking up steam. That's got to be a satisfying, very, very satisfying feeling. Have you had any, quote, mainstream or dinosaur media contact you about it yet?
Well, I've had, you know, like mostly it's been 3D magazines and 3D sites that have wanted interviews. And I've just submitted an article to a place in Colombia, of all places, for a journal that's actually given freely in the metro stations. So it's the same company actually that we have in Montreal that distributes these free, you know, magazines with news and stuff like that. And so I submitted an article to them, and I need to do one also for a guy in Britain that does a lot of more mainstream journalism. I don't know if he'll like my answers, though, because he seems to think I did this only for publicity, like that the conspiracy aspect is only a gimmick to try to generate talk, and that it wasn't actually meant. I didn't actually mean what I was saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, notice how they do something to promote the new Batman movie. It's clearly exploitive. It's clearly hype, but that's okay. But then when we bring up something political that obviously is being driven by what we believe, but yeah, we put it out so it has an effect, so that we actually are able to reach out to people, that somehow is dirty. And that's the system trying to gatekeep the innate power of humans to communicate through art.
Yeah, well, like you said, it seems to be the media is on a downward spiral. People are tuning out. They can see the conditioning. That's kind of reflected in the character that you were mentioning before, the serpent with the television head. That's the media, the mesmerizing, and the. I think I read a book by Michael Tsarian about the. I think he called them the word media actually came from Medes, which was a place in Persia, as I recall, and the Medes were actually, there were a lot of sorcerers that were consulted by the kings and queens and other powers.
Yeah, that's where we get the term medium, calling a medium to talk to the spirit world. Yeah,
that's right. So it's this, which indicates a kind of sorcery, a kind of a magician's trick, and certainly that's kind of what the media is. It's always trying to brainwash us, trying to keep us in a certain narrative. You know, don't step out of line. You're a kook. You're a conspiracy theorist. Don't say what you believe. You know, people will think you're crazy or you're, you know, whatever. It's so that's represented in that character there, and obviously the head of his name is Draco, that character, the snake character, and the head in the television. I don't know if you've noticed, but he's got all the symbols of money on his face and on his beard. It's all like dollar bills and stuff like that, and his eyebrows are actually taken from the dollar bill. And so he kind of represents the monetary system or the banking system acting through the media. And the snake part of him is actually can mean many things. I've read that the snake can represent technology, can represent obviously medicine. And so he's acting through all these things to keep the little Ludovic character that I called him. I called him Ludovic. And so he's acting through all these things to keep this little character in a sedated state.
Going back to the Christ figure, I mean, it's almost like coming out of the womb, or a rebirth, or a death and a rebirth, coming out of that darkness. And it's on the boatman, I guess Choron, or not even Greek, going back to the Egyptian. But there is no boatman. It's just the boat itself is taking him across the river. But instead of death, it's rebirth.
Right. It's a form of resurrection. Right. The motif of resurrection was really important in Greek mythology.
Wasn't Christ in the Bible sent to hell to get the keys to death and slavery? It's almost like Christ is going through.
That's right. So I mean, yeah, and in Egyptian symbology, we have the sun god Ra in his boat, Anapa, and he travels the sky in a celestial boat, and he illuminates the sky. And in the evening, he goes into the underworld, and he's there during the night. And in the morning, he rises again, and so it's a form of resurrection. And the Anubis boat, which is actually Anubis is a Greek god, but based off of an earlier Egyptian god called Anapa. And this is a deity that is guarding the gates of the underworld, and he weighs the souls of men and their hearts to and protects the souls of men as they travel through the underworld. And so I think it's a fitting image. But as I told you, I put the Christ figure in the center of the narrative, I think, to redress some of those.
Sure. And expanding on that, I mean, the point is it just gets people thinking, because this, gets off into the wider world and all these archetypes. But I noticed that when the Christ figure comes out too, we see a big pyramid in the distance collapse.
Right. Well, that's the main theme of the movie is basically the crumbling of the hierarchical world and the awakening of the hearts of men, standing alone in their relationship to God without having any sort of intermediaries. And so the hearts of men awaken, and the world serving those hearts instead of trying to dominate them, instead of trying to control and oppress. And so the crumbling pyramid at the end is just the crumbling of the hierarchical structure and this oppressive type of hierarchical structure. Obviously, there's always going to be some sort of hierarchy in organizations, but it won't be this manipulation, domination type of hierarchy. And you'll notice that the character is in a boat, the Christ character, and he just kind of sails through the scene, and he's witnessing, and he's actually not creating this. He's not destroying the pyramids. It's the sun that destroys the pyramids. The sun in the movie is representative of the divine, the source, the God, it doesn't mean I'm a sun worshiper. I'm not trying to promote sun worshiping. I've never thought of,
no, I understand. It's all archetypal. But I mean, I think the most powerful imagery is the CIA dealing drugs, the big black army tanks, the drones, the programming, Bush dancing around. What did you mean by, I mean, I guessed at it, but what is Obama doing in the scene when he looks at the flower?
I think it embodies a lot of things, but to me, it's like the little girl is holding this apple, and it represents all these kind of inward divisions that are cultivated in us to always to keep us in our place, so that we are always feeling shame or inadequacies or guilt. And it's a symbol of sin, obviously. So we're always feeling this guilt, and so we're stuck. And we're stuck in like the little children behind her, who are held down by barbed wire, and they're apathetic. So it's That's what the apple represents to me. And then she just kind of drops it because she realizes, you know, I'm sick of this. And she's watching the spectacle in front of her, so she's just tired. She just drops the apple, and it just kind of rolls down, you know, at the feet of whence it came, and it just kind of splits open. And to me, that's a symbol of kind of duality, of being caught up in the left-right, in the, you know, Christian, Muslim, male, female, always fighting, always...
Clash of civilizations, controlled
right.
clash, chaos.
And spinning in our minds, in our minds, that, you know, that's the duality. And then, you know, the checkerboard is also representing duality, the black and white. And then there's also a symbol of a 0 and a 1. And that's, you know, that's the binary system, so duality. And then the flower comes out, and the flower joins the two halves, and it comes out. And that's a symbol to me of unifying those two polar opposites and seeing it from another perspective, from above. So it's kind of like an awakening to that split mind.
Sure, well, men and women aren't, you know, individually the species. It is the two together. And then that's what creation comes out of. I mean, that's all just, again, yeah.
The harmony of, you know, everyone seeing themselves in the other, and you know, finding that common space from that, you know, and not being stuck in the divide so much. And that's kind of the awakening of people realizing they have common interests, and the character of Obama is just struck with fear at that point, you know.
You're right, because the people are coming together and waking up, and the way you caught Bush's mannerisms and the way you got Obama's fake, you know, friendly mannerisms, you really have done an incredible job. I want to thank you for the work you've done, you know, in trying to wake people up to 9/11 being an inside job. I mean, right there is important. Tell us about where Heliofont goes from here, heliofont.com, and any other points you'd like to make here, Louis.
Well, I don't know where the journey's going to take me. Obviously, it was a lot of time, and very draining, very, you know, financially and physically, but very happy with the result, very happy I've done it. So I don't know where it's going to go from here. It's not an incredible revenue generating model, to be honest, but we'll see where we go from here. I'm getting a lot of feedback, a lot of opportunities to maybe work on you know, more commercial stuff. I don't know if I'll do that, or if I'll, you know, just... But
like you said, you'd already done that in some of the biggest movies out there. This was a long labor of love. I mean, I guess almost in a pious way or a cogitative way, you committed for 4 years to this, put everything you had into it. Is almost a rebellion against commercialism and materialism? I mean, because that's what you were kind of alluding to earlier.
Yeah. Well, it was a bit of a, I wouldn't say pious, but it was a monastic.
That's what I should say. I mean, that was the word I was actually looking for. It's funny you'd say that, almost like priestly, yeah, off in the...
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think
that's what the word cogitive, like a cogiter up in the, yeah.
Right, but I think a lot of people that work in 3D have that temperament. You know, they're always at the computer and all that. So, you know, but so yeah, I'm not sure where it will go from here. I can't remember the last part of your question.
Well, that's because I always have these long-winded ones. No, just like any other points you'd like to make. I mean, after we're done doing this interview, I mean, if you think, oh, I wish I would have said this, or...
Not really, no. I've really enjoyed the interview, and I'm happy to just get my point out as well, which is, you know, the first time where I've explained some of the symbolism. I'm going to probably update today, maybe tomorrow or Friday, I'm not sure. I'm going to start explaining some of it from my view. It's not necessarily, because I don't want it to be too fixed. You know, everyone can kind of put what they want onto the work. But a lot of people have been asking me the same questions, and so I'm going to explain some of the stuff I've mentioned with you. I'm going to put on the website, and, you know, just start a discussion that way and see where it goes from there. So.
I have a few final questions popping in my head. I mean, we got sex slavery with the old lady in the cage. Is that what that is?
Yeah, well, that for me, yeah, that can be a lot of things, but it's not necessarily slavery. It's suffering around the sexual issues. So it can be, like in the beginning, she's looking down. So it can be a sort of, overindulgence in sex, or maybe it's also like an obsession with sex, or maybe it's also an obsession with repressing sex. Kind of that old nun that's, you can't have sex, you can't,
Or vanity, almost, like people get obsessed with how they look.
Right, as well, because that I think for some people, they've told me it brings up the fear of, getting old and, not pleasing anymore, not being able to have sex. And so she's getting old. So I think it brings up a lot of stuff for people that way. But basically she goes through the piece where she's kind of looking down and then she gets, she's in a kind of a shameful place because it's dingy and dark. And you'll notice that on her skirt, she has these, vine leaves, so it's almost like that shame of the Garden of Eden. And she's in her prison, so it's kind of like a place of suffering. And at the end, she just kind of, it gets inundated with light, so it just gets purified by light, by connection with spirit. And at the end, she kind of looks up, and it's almost like she had sex with God, really. Like she looks up and she's kind of purified in a way.
Well, it's funny you say that because, I mean, growing up, obviously women are beautiful, passionate, like super desire for them. As I get more into the universe and liberty and freedom and all the incredible things around me, quite frankly, sex does not have the power it had over me. But I guess that's because I'm older now. I mean, it's almost like something that I've been there, done that. And it's still interesting. I mean, I'm a great wife, 3 children, but it's just not, it's not as exciting as, my French bulldog sitting in my lap, or going fishing, or hiking up a mountain, or kissing my wife. I mean, it's almost like, yeah, people that are completely obsessed with it, it's almost like they're stunted by it.
Right. Yeah. Well, the point is, if you're, I think the point is if you're in a place of suffering and you're, if it's an escape or something like that, and you're in a place of suffering, you're not allowed to have it because of your religious ideas and stuff like that. There can be a lot of suffering around sex. So I thought it was important to put it in the piece. Well, I didn't even think about it. It just kind of visually came to me.
Well, sure, even like in the porn industry, I read about how unhappy those people are. I was talking to a filmmaker who's doing a documentary on it. He said that a lot of those people are just totally unhappy.
I guess a lot of people can be. I guess, I'm sure there are some exceptions, like there are exceptions in everything. And
oh, yeah, no, yeah, there are some people, I guess, that, I mean, just, again, it brings up a wide spectrum, almost like a cornucopia, the whole light spectrum of ideas. Just amazing.
Well, yeah, I guess that's hopefully the point, that it doesn't feel too dogmatic, because that's kind of what the church crumbling at the end is pointing to. Maybe some of the dogma needs to fall away, and we just kind of reconnect with our heart, our direct heart connection with the
well,
source.
I mean, look, all these so-called Christians say the church is God and give it all this money and stuff, but Christ was there criticizing the Pharisees, overturning the money changers' tables.
Absolutely. So it's good sometimes to re-question all this stuff, for sure.
All right, well, we're going to continue to watch the website. I know as soon as we end this interview, I'm going to have like 10 more questions. Here's my last one. The black tanks are driving up, and the character is waving the white flag. What happens there?
Well, obviously, it's well, for me, obviously a sign of kind of a reference to Tiananmen Square. So she just kind of represents the Asian sphere, I guess, because she's got that tiger on her back, so it's the Asian tiger, and it's just that I guess it could represent a lot of things. I thought about maybe it represents China, like that repressive regime, or she's also got like some nuclear anti-nuclear symbol on her cheek, so it could have to do a bit to do with Japan and how that's being repressed, all that terrible radiation seeping out, and they're not allowed to talk about it. And
then who is that comes over to her, that skeleton character? Who is he?
Someone told me that's the character of like voodoo, but personally that's not what I had in mind. It was just death, like she she's valiantly trying to combat the system, and yet death creeps up on her, and she has to submit, in the end.
Sure, you better get your work done right now while you're here and alive. And I mean, I'm just asking you, I mean, obviously that's what I got was Tiananmen Square.
Right, yeah, I think that's a pretty obvious. And a lot of people, I've seen a lot of comments of people online say, it's kind of heavy-handed but yeah, they're right. It is heavy-handed in a lot of ways, but then again, I look at reality and the way politicians and the media and everything, it's starting to get pretty heavy-handed as well.
No, it's gotten extreme, and it's telling us don't get extreme so that we don't have power. Louis Lefebvre, amazing job, and I can't wait to see what you make next. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thanks very much, Alex.
Thank you. Is that the best website to visit, heliofont.com?
Yeah, you can go right to heliofont.com, and then we're having some issues. There's been so many people on the site. It's kind of waning right now, but a lot of people on the site, and we're having a bit of difficulty meeting up with demand, but we're trying to figure that out and trying to get that redressed. So hopefully we'll have something better soon. But they can go to that site, and then they'll see the video, the Vimeo feed immediately when they come in, and they can click on Vimeo if they want it in bigger, and they'll be redirected to Vimeo's site, and they can see it bigger if they want, better quality and all that. So.
All right, Louis Lefebvre, amazing artist, and people can claim you're the devil if they want, but there's no doubt that you're an amazing artist. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Alex.
Wow. Well, very, very powerful, ladies and gentlemen, and it gets you thinking. The really devilish propaganda out there does the opposite. It just sneaks up, oh, a football game, oh, a commercial, oh, but then buried in it are the archetypes and the programming and the messages. That's what's seriously corrupt out there. So certainly thought-provoking, and hey, if you think you can do better, dedicate yourself to something like that, and let's see what you can come up with, because Mr. Lefebvre is definitely in the arena. Well, that's it for this extended edition of InfoWars Nightly News. Until tomorrow night, or tomorrow when I'm on the radio, we will see you then, hopefully. Please spread the word about Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv, because the system is definitely starting to pay even bigger attention to us, and we are under attack, and we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for all of you. And think of all the artists, all the researchers, all the ideas from a wide spectrum. Doesn't mean we agree with it all, that we bring to you here. This is all about the labor of love. It's all about the passion. It's all about really trying to discover the secrets of the universe and reality. That's what we're doing here. Doesn't mean we have all the answers, far from it, but we're questing after those answers, and we know we're not going to get it out of the mainstream systems 9 times out of 10. Great job to the crew as usual. I'm Alex Jones signing off.